Hey everyone, this is just kind of an introduction and a sample to the Ethics Theory Nap project. So this is the kind of main project that we've been slowly working on throughout the semester, and now that we have enough ethics in under our belt, we can actually work on it. Okay, so this is up in our folder here, assignment folder, and you can download it, and I advise you to download it and kind of follow along with me. So first is the due date, and it's going to be on the left column of our Blackboard site. If it's not available right now, if you don't see it, then it will be in a few days. Now, what's the objective? What are we doing here? Identifying and explaining moral situations at a potential place and work, right? So this is based on your interview, right? So that's why we did the interview. Evaluate the situation in light of moral theories. That's the lectures, the discussions, the journals that we've been doing all semester. And consider possible solutions, raise objections, and make an informal philosophical decision of the course of action. So we've been doing this with the case studies. So this is kind of like my master plan, that we've been working on all these things in different areas. But eventually, what I want you to get out of this class is that you have some tools to think through some moral situations, okay? So the first part one, is to write a case study, and we've been doing that, and you'll be doing more of that this week. Now, so here is just kind of basic, but what you want to, you're going to have to turn it in, okay? So that's part one of the project. Part two is evaluating the ethical situation for one of your cases, okay? So that is, we are only doing one case. So write up the case study procedure as thoroughly as you can. And you're thinking, what is the case study procedure? Well, I'm glad you asked, because here's the template. So what I want you to do is I want you to fill it out. And this has to be typed. And I've included this in Microsoft Word so that you can kind of copy and paste these questions, and then you can start inputting things. So number one, gather the facts. Number two, what are the ethical principles, values bearing on the case? Number three, determine which ethical principles conflict in terms of X versus Y. List the alternative, that is, what are the possible actions? Compare the alternatives with the principles. Consider the consequences, and consider how this action is in line with your character. Also reflect on how continuing this course of action may affect your character, and then make a decision. And this is kind of like in a couple of paragraphs. Now you're thinking, well, do you have an example? And actually, I'm glad you asked. So here is an example I did. I didn't do the full thing, but this is, remember, the example that we used for the case study, or actually you'll see the case study in a little bit, and this is the revised case study. And so first, what you need to do is write the job description. So chef and business owner. Now if you are in IT, then write your job description. What would your job description say? Or if you are you're a graphic designer, then put the job description of what you do here, so that I know what you're responsible for, right? And I'm not like, oh, why is this an ethical issue? Oh, okay, because notice their job requirements. Okay, now here's the case. So Sue runs a restaurant that serves only the finest ingredients, no matter the cost, to keep her upscale patrons satisfied and wowed. Unfortunately, Sue is struggling financially and faces closing the restaurant. Recently, she had a request for Russian wild beluga caviar, with the customer offering to pay enough for Sue to continue running the restaurant. She is a firm believer in sustainable foods and conserving resources for the future to enjoy. Sue knows that not only is the product illegal to harvest, the species is endangered, and poaching contributes to to the vast majority of production of the product. Given that Sue must uphold her duties to provide for her guests and the need for her to continue business for her personal well-being, is it morally permissible to ignore the implications of acquiring such products to save her restaurant? Okay, so this is the case, and what are the facts? So remember, these are just the facts, not an interpretation of the facts. I just want objective claims. And she serves food with only the finest ingredients. That's her thing, right? Notice the second bullet point. Her restaurant is financially struggling, that it may close soon. Okay. A customer requested, caviar, and it's illegal, right? Now, what are some principles bearing on this case? Now, so I broke this up into kind of three kinds of principles to distinguish moral principles, okay? That if that helps you, great, right? So here's some principles that are restaurant. Maybe this is like her mission statement for her business. Serve only the finest ingredients. That's her tagline. Or the customer always comes first, right? Given the kind of restaurant she owns, right? It's a high-end restaurant. Okay, what are some moral principles? Well, you should obey laws of the land when they do not conflict with moral laws. Okay, that seems a fine moral principle. Notice they all have a should, right? Now, if you want to talk about moral values, you can do that as well, right? Now, one should not act in a way that goes against one's conscience. Maybe that's one. One should protect the environment for future generations. One should not consume or serve animal products. Now, just a note, with this conscience thing, this is very hard to tell. If you're going, try not to use this one. I just put it down there when I initially did it. But we don't know Sue's conscience, right? This is a kind of hypothetical case. Her conscience is struggling right now. That's why it's a difficult decision, right? But most of the time she's going with her conscience. Okay, one should not consume or serve animals or animal products that are endangered. Okay, that could be a moral principle, right? One should not support businesses that are illegal. One should not support business practices that harm the environment. So she is all about this. So these are moral principles, right? And there's some practical principles. One should be able to make a living to support oneself and one's family. And is that a moral principle? Maybe, any principles as a business owner? I don't know. So I put these as practical principles, but I'm saying this is a practical principle because she doesn't have to own a restaurant in order to make a living, right? She could, close down the restaurant, and if she's very skilled, she could work for another restaurant. And so this is not the only option or only game in town. That's why I put it as a practical principle. It's not like this is the only thing. So you think about that. Make this real. Okay, number 3, determine which ethical principles conflict. Now, this may be the kind of difficult part, right? So here, I'm looking at some of these principles, right? Because obviously, these principles are not all equal. And the reason why this is a moral dilemma or a difficult case is because some of these principles are conflicting with one another. And in the conflicting circumstance of this case, I want you to be able to think and see which principles are conflicting and which are, remember, some values are higher than others. Some principles may be more important than others. So I want you to weigh the principles as well, right? So here's the restaurant principle of customer always comes first versus the moral principle one should not serve animals. So notice there's a conflict there. The customer wants this. It's illegal, but you shouldn't serve this kind of stuff, but that's what the customer wants, right? In this kind of case, usually what's more important? So notice what I wrote here. Principle of customer always comes first. It's like when I think about without consequence, I think the latter is more important, right? That you should not consume animals that are endangered, right? The customer is not always right. If the customer says, "Oh, can I have some human flesh?" Do you say, "Okay, I'm going to give human flesh"? No, obviously, that comes at too high of a cost. And when you don't think about certain, Sue's condition or a circumstance, you're probably going to think, yeah, she's not going to serve this, in all things considered, right? But notice why I'm saying all this kind of stuff, because not all issues are just about one or two principles. It's going to be about a lot of things, and you have to weigh the principles, the consequences, what it does to your character, all of that. And this, hopefully, this procedure will bring to light all the issues. Okay, now what are the alternatives? This is really important. So Sue here, now basically this means, what can she do? So she can acquire and serve the caviar to the customer. She can deny the customer's request for the caviar. And then I came up with a third one. Sue can deny the customer's request but give alternative suggestions for a specialty dish that is sustainable, right? Are there other ones? Now, when you think about, some of these issues, it's probably going to be like maybe 2 or 3 options that are going to be highlighted, that are going to be viable, right? I mean, I can come up with options like, oh, Sue can, go into research and, clone the caviar, and come on, that's not, I mean, yeah, that's not really a real live option. So don't think about those kinds of far off options. Think about what's a viable option. What's something that can be done, not science fiction. Okay. So what, given these viable options, then you're going to go through here. Now, for the case of the example, I'm only going to go through 4A. Sue can both acquire and serve the caviar. And then I'm going to go through all the steps. Now, what you will have to do is that you think of maybe 2 or 3 viable options of alternatives, of actions, and then you will go through all the alternatives, all, 5, 6, 7, and 5, 6, 7 for all of them. Okay, and you're going to type it out and you're going to think through all of them. Okay, but this is just 4A. So option 4A is that Sue can both acquire and serve the caviar to the customer. So what's now comparing the alternatives with the principles? So it seems to be in line with the principles of a restaurant, right? That you serve the finest ingredients. That's a fine ingredient. The customer always comes first. So I'm saying, what are things that are in line with 4A? Caviar is the finest ingredient, one of the finest ingredients, which is why it has become over-harvested. Serving caviar is also in line with great customer service, and it's a trademark of fine dining. Okay, so these are principles that are in line with, that support 4A. Now, also 4A, Sue can both acquire and serve the caviar, seems to go against certain principles. One should obey the laws when they do not conflict with moral laws. You can figure out the rest. Do you get what I'm saying? So I'm trying to see what principles are in line with it and what principles are not in line with it. So you're comparing the alternatives with principles. Note, you would have to do it with all the viable alternatives. So the viable alternatives here would be A, B, and C. So you would do 4B and 4C and write it all. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, 6, consider the consequences. Definite consequences resulting from 4A, right, is that in acquiring and serving the caviar, she has committed a crime, contributes to blah, blah, blah. So I'm giving notice these are definite consequences and possible consequences. Serving the caviar may be part in making the fish go extinct, possible, environmental effects, being caught serving caviar, being fined, stripped of a restaurant, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. And you would do this with all the 4B and 4C. Okay. Number 7. Consider how this action is in line with your character. So you're reflecting now. You've studied some virtue ethics, and you realize how important character is, how important habit is. And the thing is, criminals don't become criminals overnight, right? They take little steps in doing in becoming a criminal. It might be internal steps, right? Or it could be little, actions, right? So, what you want to think about is you want to reflect on how 4A, for example, 4B and 4C may affect your character. What kind of person would you become? So in pursuing 4A, Sue may be shaping her character to commit illegal actions more easily. If she does not get caught the first time, would she be more willing to do it again the second time? Right? And then you do this all with 4B and 4C. And finally, 8 here, you make a decision. And here, I didn't write it out, but this is what I want you in 1 or 2 paragraphs to write it out. Suppose that your boss asked you about the situation. In one email, can you explain your decision along with your reasons? So what you've done in this whole thing should inform you to help you think through your decision and what you're telling your boss, right? And you're writing an email. So it can't be like super long. It has to be concise and but you have to give reasons, right? Grammar counts if you're talking to your boss. So, what principles, values, and or consequences led you to make your decision? Why were the principles, values, or consequences that guided your thinking stronger than the other principles that were relevant to you? So you should explain. Your boss is smart. They want a detail. They just want your decision. They want your decision with backup, justification. Now, what you're going to do after this case study is you're going to do a video vlog or video blog based on this. So I'll post the due dates for that later too. All right. I hope this helped. And if you have more questions, let me know. And I hope this, really gets you excited about doing this assignment. All right. Take care.